The start of the free agency period is always a time when players get overpaid, but many of them are able to play up to the money they received. However, almost every year there is someone whose contract is worth much more than their performance. To show you what you should be afraid of if your general manager signs someone for big money, I have prepared a list of the worst NBA contracts. So sit down and watch carefully. In 1989, the Atlanta Hawks signed their backup center John Koncak to a 6-year $30 million deal. This wouldn't be anything special now, but way back in 1989 it was one of the top 10 highest contracts in NBA, and it was for a player who averaged 6.2 points and 6.1 rebounds per game in his career. And until the end of his career, all of his stats dropped significantly. He even made more money than Michael Jordan in that season. That's how crazy his contract was. In the 1990s, the CBA wasn't as strict as it is now, and there were no rookie-scale contracts, so players and teams had more flexibility. After being selected as the number 1 overall pick in 1993, Chris Webber signed a 15-year deal with the Golden State Warriors worth over $74 million. However, this deal included a clause that allowed him to opt out after just 1 year. He demanded a trade, and the Warriors let him go to the Washington Bullets in exchange for Tom Gugliara and a future first-round pick. This pick became Vince Carter, who was later traded to the Raptors for Anton Jamison. It's hard to understand why a team would let go of the number 1 overall player after just 1 year, especially when he was the Rookie of the Year and he led the team to the playoffs. It's just being stupid. But the Washington Wizards had their own share of bad contracts. Gilbert Arenas was the face of the franchise, but in 2007 he tore his MCL. In the following season he played only the first 8 games and then was sidelined again until March. He ended the season playing a total of 13 games and opted out of his contract. The Wizards had to fight for his signature under a deal with the Golden State Warriors, and he finally stayed in Washington for $111 million over 6 years. He also forced a team to sign a deal with Anton Jamison. Then Arenas, because of injuries, played in just 2 games. The next season, he started better, averaging over 22 points per game. But then the firearm incident with Javaris Crittenton happened, and he was suspended indefinitely without pay. The following year he was traded to the Orlando Magic and didn't even stay in the NBA until the end of his contract. In 1996, the Seattle Supersonics made it to the NBA Finals and believed they were close to becoming champions. So they decided to strengthen their frontcourt by adding defensive center Jim McIlvaine. He had just finished a season with the Washington Bullets when he averaged 5 blocks per 36 minutes played. However, he also averaged only 5.5 points and 5.2 fouls per 36 minutes. Despite these underwhelming numbers, the Sonics gave him over $33 million contract for 7 years, and then played him only 18 minutes per game. The real issue was that superstar Shawn Kemp was suddenly making less than 5 of his teammates and couldn't renegotiate his deal for another year. 2 years into the deal, the Sonics dumped McIlvaine's contract on the Nets, and he was done playing 2 years before his contract expired. Allan Houston was a fine player for the New York Knicks, making 2 All-Star teams and hitting a clutch shot to beat the Heat as the Knicks went to the NBA Finals in 1999. However, he was already 30 years old. That didn't stop the Knicks from kicking off a decade full of terrible financial decisions, starting with giving Houston a 6-year, 9-figure contract in 2001. Houston performed well for 2 years but then injured his knee and was never the same player again. His contract became such a burden that the league created an amnesty provision in the collective bargaining agreement, known as the Allan Houston Rule. In a testament to the Knicks' consistently terrible management, they chose insurance payments for Houston's knee over cap relief and used the Allan Houston Rule to waive the other player, who was Jerome Williams. It's incredible that Chandler Parsons signed a contract with the Dallas Mavericks in a strip club, and it's not nearly the worst free agency decision associated with him. After 2 unspectacular years with the Mavs, where he got hurt in the 2015 playoffs and missed the end of the 2015-16 season due to knee surgery, Parsons opted out of his deal and signed a giant 4-year, $94 million deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. However, his knee never fully recovered, and Parsons played only 95 games in his 3 seasons with the team. The deal torpedoed the Grizzlies, who went into full rebuild mode and eventually lost Marc Gasol and Mike Conley. There was no better time to be a big man coming off a career year than the late 90s, as Jason Williams can attest. The 30-year-old Williams made his lone All-Star team in 1998 when he also led the league in offensive rebounding ahead of Dennis Rodman. After the season, the Nets signed him to a 6-year, $86 million contract to keep him in New Jersey long-term. However, less than 3 months later, Williams broke his leg after colliding with teammate Stephen Marbury. He had a plate inserted in his leg the next day and never played in the NBA again. Less than a year later, Williams accidentally shot his limo driver while playing with a shotgun and eventually served more than 2 years in prison, which is even worse than the salary cap hell. The New York Knicks have a long history of signing really bad contracts for centers. Remember Jerome James and Eddie Curry? Knicks fans definitely remember them. However, there is simply no way to justify the Knicks signing of a washed-up Joakim Noah to a 4-year $72 million contract in the summer of 2016, when many of the most heinous deals on our list were signed. Noah's body was so beaten up that he played only 29 games the year before, so the Knicks couldn't have been blindsided when he played only 40 total minutes in the second year of his deal. That's $450,000 per minute. Throughout his entire Knicks career, he played just 95 games. He then had a short stint with the Grizzlies and Clippers, but man, what a bad move. When Kobe Bryant's massive final contract retirement bonus came off the books in the summer of 2016, the Lakers were ready to blow all their newfound cap space on some washed-up veterans. They gave Timofey Mozgov 4 years and $64 million at the beginning of free agency, despite him being off the court in 2 straight finals games. He played only 25 minutes when Cleveland upset the Warriors in 2016. 1 year later, they gave up D'Angelo Russell, the number 2 pick from the 2015 draft, just to get rid of Mozgov's contract. Luol Deng received $72 million contract after averaging 20.3 points in Miami Heat, and then played just 79 games for the Lakers. It was a misguided move, as Deng was no longer any kind of a star, and he was already 31. Plus, he used to play for Tom Thibodeau, which meant his real NBA age was about 36. The 4-year deals handed out to Bismack Biyombo and Ian Mahinmi in 2016 were simply baffling. Biyombo had been a total bust since being drafted 7th overall in 2011, but apparently wowed the Orlando Magic with his strong playoff performance with the Raptors, including a 26 rebound game in the conference finals. Was that worth $18 million per season? Dear God, no. Biyombo can be a strong defender, but he is a horrendous offensive player. Plus, Orlando already had Nikola Vucevic at center. Meanwhile, Mahinmi got $64 million from the Washington Wizards, seemingly because they had already budgeted the money for Al Horford. Washington already had a starting center, Marcin Gortat. Mahinmi has missed 42% of Washington's games since signing his deal, and as a result of his milestone of a contract, the Wizards gave away Otto Porter, an actually good player, to Chicago for free, just to cut payroll. And this concludes the Hall of Shame list of all general managers. Of course, you could find other really bad deals in the history of the NBA, but those are the ones I remember the most. Do you have any other ideas? Put them in the comments and let's discuss them. For now, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!